Hello, bonjour. Welcome to the Union Safety Net, le filet de sécurité syndicale, a union podcast for working people. I'm your host, Sébastien Bezeau, et oui, parfois en français aussi. This podcast is hosted by the Union of Safety and Justice Employees, le syndicat des employés de la sécurité et de la justice. Join us for an informative discussion every month about issues currently affecting working people. On this episode, I'm delighted to welcome the Public Service Alliance of Canada's newly elected executive leadership team to talk about telework, bargaining, and other issues facing PSAC members. It's a great honor for us to highlight the start of a new era at PSAC with the Alliance's recently elected National President Sharon D'Souza, as well as her colleague, National Executive Vice President Alex Silas. Sharon and Alex, welcome to both of you to the Union Safety Net.
Thanks for having us.
Pleasure to be here. I'm so excited about this podcast.
Awesome. Well, we really appreciate your time. We know how busy you both are. Sharon, let's get right into it. You are the first racialized national president of the Public Service Alliance of Canada. So tell us, what does this mean for you personally? And what do you think it means for PSAC?
Well, what I can say to you, I've been active for over 20 years. So when I got active as a member on my local executive, I never thought that this would become such a passion of mine, and the fact that I would move through various positions. And it was interesting because oftentimes I was the youngest person there, the only racialized person, and in many forms, the only woman. And to see that shift and that change as I moved up and looking at other people who've held that position, it's amazing to see that shift and change. For PSAC, it's a huge, I would say, break in a systemic barrier, right? Because we're talking about PSAC's been around since 1966. It's a huge barrier that has been broken. And for many people, they didn't think it was possible. And listen, if I can do it, so can you. And that's really the messaging around this. And it wasn't just about me. It was about the faith of the membership in me to elect me to this position. And that is a huge piece to this, right? It's a collective. It's truly a collective victory.
Yeah, and just because I think it's important for us all to acknowledge how important it is that we broke this glass ceiling, that representation piece. And I thought I'd share something, and I don't think I've even shared this with you, Sharon, yet. But during convention, on the day of the elections, after the elections, I remember I was back in the observer section, and I met this young black woman who came and she introduced herself to me. And she said, I'm from Sharon's home local, her CEIU local in Toronto, and I'm in the same human rights officer position where Sharon started. And she told me about how, she was there as an observer. She told me about how she took a personal vacation day and drove that morning from Toronto, and our election started at 9 a.m., which means she would have left at, 4 or 5 in the morning probably, drove all the way just to be there for that moment. Like, that's such a personal and powerful example of why representation matters in the movement.
And thank you for sharing that. Now, Sharon, why in the world would you want to become president of PSAC? And let's set the stage for our listeners. The Public Service Alliance of Canada, it represents 15 components, if I get my numbers right. When I say component, we're talking about a national union that represents members across the country. So you get like 15 different union leaders who all have their own objectives, own politics. In addition to that, you have what we call directly chartered locals, which are unionized locals that are not part necessarily of a component. Why would you want to put yourself in that position to lead such a challenging organization? What's your drive? What's your motivation?
Really? It's about the members. We have the most amazing, dynamic, fierce members that I've ever seen and had the privilege to meet and work with. Just when you think there's no way possible, there's a member who will come up with an idea and they'll say, what do you think of this? And I'm like, yeah, that's a possibility. And that one little idea becomes a campaign like this podcast.
Right.
And it becomes a victory, like getting equitable retirement for our frontline workers.
Yeah.
These are all wins because of the members. And I truly believe in the greatness of that membership. And we're currently sitting at 252,000 members as of last month. 252,000 members. And if you think about the power of that membership, as I said, it's truly an honor and privilege. But the greatness is really in that grassroots leadership and in that movement.
It is quite a privilege to work for a union, regardless which position it is. Even myself in communications, I keep telling our members, I work for you, a parole officer, a detachment service assistant, someone who works in anti-fraud for the RCMP. Like, I could never do your job. But I am so privileged to work for you and defend your rights, and I'll give you my 110%. And that's what you both do on a regular basis. Alex, t'es le premier Acadien sur notre balado. Bien sûr, on a invité...
L'union fait la force!
Ben, tu l'as bien dit. Mais l'invitation est lancée au ministre de la Sécurité publique, Dominique Leblanc, qui devrait être le deuxième invité. Mais entre-temps, Alex, tu l'as battu to the punch.
Je suis extrêmement fier d'être le premier Acadien. Puis garde, le ministre Leblanc, c'est le ministre pour la circonscription où j'ai grandi à Grand-Barachois. Donc, j'espère qu'il va accepter votre invitation. Puis j'espère aussi qu'on va être capable de compter sur lui.
Ben, c'est ça que je m'en allais. Tu viens d'où? Comme tu as été le vice-président exécutif régional de la capitale nationale. Tu viens de dire, tu viens du Grand Barachois. Mais il y a du monde qui sait que ça vient de l'Acadie. Mais où est-ce que ça vient? Puis quand est-ce que ton engagement a commencé au sein du mouvement syndical? Là, tu es le numéro 2 de la FPC. Où est-ce que ça a tout commencé?
Wow. J'ai grandi à Grand-Barachois, New-Brunswick. C'est proche de Shediac, proche de Moncton, pour ceux qui connaissent pas la géographie du New-Brunswick. Mais moi, mon engagement syndical a été au cours de toute ma vie. T'sais, j'ai vraiment grandi dans une famille syndicale. Ma mère, Linda Sloss, c'est une grande leader de notre mouvement. Je suis très chanceux et fier de l'avoir eu comme role model. Elle raconte souvent une histoire que ma première phrase complète, c'était « No wage freeze ». Elle m'avait amené à une ligne de piquetage de la FPC pendant la grève générale de 1991. J'avais 1 an, puis elle m'a amené à cette ligne de piquetage-là. Puis c'est là que j'ai appris la phrase « No wage freeze ». Mais tu sais, même si que ça faisait partie de mes valeurs puis comment j'ai été élevé, mon engagement dans mon syndicat au niveau de ce que je suis présentement engagé, c'était pas quelque chose qui était dans les plans pour moi. C'est pas quelque chose que je me voyais. J'avais une carrière de musique à un temps, là, tu sais, c'est ça que je faisais. J'étais très fier de ma job comme agent de sécurité à la Banque du Canada. C'est une bonne carrière. C'est l'est encore une bonne carrière. Puis quand j'ai été engagé là en 2010, c'était mon premier emploi syndiqué. Puis je savais quoi ça voulait dire. Je savais que les protections de la convention collective, le fait qu'on pouvait négocier nos salaires, négocier nos avantages, que c'était important. Puis la protection du syndicat, c'était important. Donc, j'ai devenu shop steward, délégué syndical.
Ah, ça, c'est la meilleure job, hein?
Oui,
shop steward, ça, c'est, been there, done that.
C'est la job la plus importante du syndicat. Puis je pense qu'aussi que dans n'importe quel rôle qu'on est dans, il faut toujours se rappeler de cette approche de shop steward, qu'on est là pour les membres. J'étais shop steward pendant longtemps. On a eu une ronde de négociation particulièrement difficile où ce que j'ai vraiment pris le lead sur nos efforts de mobilisation. Ça m'a permis d'établir une relation avec le bureau régional de la FPC-RCN quand on travaillait en mobilisation. Ensuite, j'ai eu l'opportunité d'être le premier délégué de ma section locale, aller à un congrès national de la FPC, le congrès de 2018. On est une petite section locale, je devais mentionner, on a 48 membres, 55 maintenant, parce qu'on a été syndiqué Montréal, mais ça, c'est une autre histoire. Puis de là, je me suis impliqué avec le comité des jeunes travailleurs, je me suis présenté comme VPER suppléant. Puis ensuite, j'ai devenu VPER en 2020, dans les débuts mois de la pandémie. Puis ça a été pas mal rock'n'roll depuis ce temps-là.
Incroyable, hein? C'est pas comme si tu planifiais de te présenter à un moment donné pour devenir un des leaders de la FPC, là. C'était pas dans tes cartes, ça a juste comme genre arrivé, hein?
Ouais, puis tu sais, je me sens très reconnaissant, là. Tu sais, c'est pas quelque chose que je prends pour acquis. Puis je me lève à chaque matin en me sentant vraiment chanceux d'être capable de travailler pour les travailleurs. Comme tu dis, c'est vraiment un honneur d'être capable de représenter puis servir les travailleurs et travailleuses de notre syndicat. Puis c'est quelque chose que je parle jamais de vue.
Ben, c'est le fun en tant qu'Acadien de voir un autre Acadien au sein d'un poste de leadership de la FPC. Sharon, let's talk business. Let's talk telework. I work from home 100% and I'm extremely productive, probably more productive than if I'm stuck at an office from 9 to 5, Monday to Friday. Treasury board, you know, we've talked about it. We've had rally actually especially when we were in Ottawa recently, about the decision of not really consulting the unions about the telework and hybrid work approach. So what's going on there, and what's PSAC's take on the whole telework, hybrid work?
Well, I can tell you it's a bloody hot mess. You would think something as simple as consultation would be easy. However, we know that this is politically motivated, and all the data proves that you're absolutely right. You're more productive at home when you're in a safe environment and you're able to focus. Mm-hmm. And you know what? We want to just say that hybrid work or remote work is not for everyone.
Correct.
What this is about is where it is possible to have the opportunity. Mm-hmm. And the government of Canada are leaders. They're the largest employer in Canada. So you would think that as a leader, you'd be like, this worked through the pandemic. We were more productive than ever. Let's continue to do this. Because guess what? It's not working when it's 2 days in the office. There's what? Issues of infestation of bed bugs. This is whoever's listening to this, I'm just going to get a little graphic. So if it may be too graphic for you, we've got bats. We've got issues with lead piping, with water. We've got infrastructure issues. And guess what? There's people working in cafeterias. They're working out in the halls. There's no meeting space. They're coming in. And guess what? They're on an online platform and doing a meeting. Mm-hmm. So does this make sense? It makes no sense whatsoever. So why would you do it if it's not politically motivated? And the fact that it's a slap in the face, that this the week prior, the question was asked and it was not on their radar. They said, no, we're not going to do this. And then you have an announcement. Make it make sense.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, what remote work and hybrid work, if it's possible, does, it gives people some work-life balance, mm-hmm. especially if you have a young family, if you have maybe care of an extended family member. This gives you a little bit of options. It's not a formal accommodation, but it gives you some options. And why would you not, as a leader, want to give your worker options mm-hmm. and having to work in an inclusive environment where you can be productive?
Sorry, I didn't mean to make your blood pressure spike up.
Let me tell you, my blood gets hot. The hands start moving. It just infuriates me.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, let's talk about mental health.
Right.
And the impact to our members. And the fact is, we've seen time and time again, and I'm a little tired of those lip service pieces. Here, we set up a bureau to deal with mental health. Here, we're doing this for your mental health. And lo and behold,
right.
You just caused X amount of workers to spin
mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
who don't have the infrastructure or necessarily the support mechanisms to be able to change their life in less than 3 months. Has anyone ever tried to get childcare where your child is not underage, but you have that little gap to pick them up from the school bus?
Yeah.
Seriously, I don't know what they were thinking.
Il faut pas la tête à Papineau, Alex, pour comprendre tout ça. Puis je veux dire, en veux-tu pas que la fonction publique se modernise puis qu'elle embauche comme les meilleurs, la crème de la crème? Mais comme que Sharon a dit, l'employeur agit pas comme un employeur de choix, là. Ça fait, qu'est-ce que t'en penses, toi, avec tout ce qui se passe avec le télétravail?
Non, j'écho ce que Sharon dit, puis t'as absolument raison aussi, Seb. Il y a tellement un manque de vision à s'adapter, à moderniser au futur du travail. Le télétravail, c'est une réalité. C'est une nouvelle modalité de comment on travaille. Ça change pas. La question, c'est est-ce que le gouvernement va avoir de la vision puis il y a des leaders dans le futur du travail ou va-t-il falloir qu'on les amène kicking and screaming dans le futur? Puis présentement, on est dans une situation où ils sont plus dans le passé, ils sont plus dans les modalités de travail qui marchent plus. Puis c'est pas juste que ça marche plus pour les travailleurs et travailleuses, mais ça marche plus pour le service qu'on rend à la population canadienne. Parce qu'on a monté pendant la pandémie qu'on est capable de fournir les services à la population souvent plus efficacement du télétravail. C'est une bonne chose. C'est bénéfique pour l'environnement. C'est bénéfique pour des plans pour adresser la crise du logement. C'est bénéfique pour la santé mentale, la balance travail-vie. Puis sans oublier que on a plusieurs membres, puis il y a plusieurs travailleurs où c'est pas une option. Moi-même, je viens d'un background d'agent de sécurité. Ça se fait pas en télétravail.
Non, c'est ça, ouais.
Mais que nos rues, que nos autoroutes, que nos bureaux soient moins remplis, moins pactés, ça aussi, c'est une bonne chose. Ça mène à des meilleurs services. Mais une autre chose que je dirais, Ça, c'est quelque chose qu'on regarde déjà, puis qu'on pense déjà à la prochaine ronde de négociation avec le Conseil du Trésor. Il va falloir garder cette même énergie, ce même feu dans notre ventre pour lutter pour des améliorations en télétravail. On a vu cette semaine à la manif avec le SEJ pour le télétravail, puis plusieurs autres éléments nous ont joints. Il va falloir garder cette même esprit d'être prêt à fighter, en bon chiac, d'être prêt à lutter pour encore plus d'amélioration dans le langage qu'on a dans la convention collective sur le télétravail.
Ouais, excellent. Sharon, let's talk about the Canada Border Services Agency. They came close at going on strike. They extended mediation. They got a tentative agreement. And I believe that one of their big asks was 25 and out. So 25 years of service, and then they can retire with no penalty for their pension because they consider themselves frontline officers, like police officers and other workers. Can you expand us on that? Can you tell us what actually happened and what? I know you can't tell us the details of the agreement until it's adopted and made public, but share with us what happened there.
So first of all, the two are two totally different topics. 25 and out, as we call it, has been a priority for many, many of us for over, I would say, 10 years. I remember when I was on the bargaining team in 2007, way back when, and that was a priority back then for many people. And you know that when it comes to pensions, it can't be bargained. That's legislation.
Right.
So this victory, and it is a victory, a win, is from over 20 years of our members coming forward and saying, hey, this is not fair. We don't have equitable retirement. You're causing us to work 5 years longer when what we do is we show up and we protect your borders. We make sure your children are safe. We stop human trafficking, stop the guns, the drugs. We also fight wildfires, and we're frontline workers that protect all those who live in Canada day in and day out. But guess what? Our counterparts get to retire 5 years early because of the hazards that they're exposed to, because of the mental health issues as a result of being under that stress. And so it was absolutely beautiful to hear Minister Anand say that they took the recommendations of the Public Service Pension Advisory Committee to heart and that she's open to other groups. It was beautiful to hear that they're willing to start the legislation and have it enacted in early fall. To me, it was the work of so many people, and there's some who have retired and passed away because of these exposures, who've never got to see it. And when I talk about the greatness of our members, this is an example. She spoke about the firefighters, where for the first time we had an elected official listen and hear about what they go through, being exposed to various hazardous chemicals and smoke inhalation. And a lot of them have passed away early from cancer.
Right.
But to hear their stories, and our border service officers who oftentimes, because of car exhaust, are in these mini booths that are not properly ventilated. You know, it's health and safety issues. The exposure is causing cancer. Like, these are just some of these stories of what our members do to protect all of Canada, right?
Right.
They put their own health on the line.
Yeah.
So, you know, that's a separate issue. But I want to talk about the FB contract. And it was a huge win. That bargaining team is badass, let me tell you. You know, and it's not just the bargaining team, it's the membership.
Right.
The membership was very clear that we were tired of being left behind. They were earning like less than 15% towards the RCMP or similar law enforcement within the federal public service.
Right.
How is that fair?
You know.
It's just not. And the hard work of the mobilization of that membership and the allies enabled this win. No concessions. It bridged the gap and dealt with some of the major issues. And the ratification kit is available on the website. Take a look at it. But this is what true solidarity looks like. And when we band together, we win. So now it's in the hands of the membership to determine whether or not it's enough for them. And that will be their decision.
Well, congratulations to them on reaching a tentative agreement. Now, Alex, it's your turn to get your blood boiling. We're going to talk politics here. Tu te souviens au congrès de l'AFPC qui s'est passé récemment, puis on va finir là-dessus tout de suite après. Notre chère consoeur Magali Picard, qui est à la tête de la FTQ, la Fédération des travailleurs et travailleuses du Québec, a mentionné durant son allocution que peut-être avec un gouvernement conservateur de Pierre Poilievre qui va peut-être essayer de se débarrasser de la formule RAND. Alors, peux-tu expliquer c'est quoi la formule RAND pour le monde qui sait pas ce que c'est, puis penses-tu que ça va se passer?
Well, I'll start by saying Pierre Poilievre is a pretender. He's a clown. He's somebody who dresses up to try to appeal to blue-collar workers. But I think most Canadians are starting to see through that because we know that's not who he really is. It's an act that he's putting on to trick people and to manipulate people into what would ultimately be an anti-worker platform and anti-worker policies that a Poilievre government would bring. Donc, c'est ça. C'est quelqu'un qui se prétend. C'est quelqu'un qui se maquille puis qui s'habille comme si il prétend d'être quelqu'un de la classe ouvrière. Mais je pense que la majorité de la population peut voir à travers ça puis voir que c'est pas du tout c'est qui. Puis c'est pas quelqu'un qui a les intérêts des travailleuses canadiens au cœur ou en tête du tout. Ce qui est la formule RAND, pour répondre à ta question puis expliquer ça, la formule RAND, c'est une formule qui a été établie pour dire que si un milieu de travail est syndiqué, que tout le monde qui est dans ce milieu de travail-là, selon le certificat, selon l'unité de négociation, fait partie du syndicat et paye des cotisations au syndicat. Donc, ça nous a modernisé d'un temps où ce qu'il fallait faire signer chaque carte. C'est encore important de signer vos cartes syndicales. Il y a des avantages à signer votre carte syndicale, mais ça nous permet de savoir c'est qui nos membres dans le milieu de travail, d'avoir une loi ferme qui garantit le droit de ces travailleurs d'être représentés par le syndicat, puis qui garantit le droit du syndicat de représenter ces travailleurs-là. Donc, c'est sûr que un gouvernement potentiel Poilievre amènerait plein de changements négatifs à la formule RAND, puis je suis sûr à d'autres choses aussi. Sous un gouvernement Poilievre, les travailleuses canadiens seraient sous attaque, c'est clair. Puis on voit ça dans les gouvernements conservateurs provinciaux, comme le gouvernement Ford ici en Ontario, comme le gouvernement Higgs au Nouveau-Brunswick. On le sait que ça donne des gouvernements conservateurs, c'est pas bon pour la population, c'est pas bon pour les services publics, c'est pas bon pour les travailleurs. Puis il va falloir se mobiliser dans l'élection fédérale pour lutter contre ça. Parce que moi, je suis pas prêt à accepter que Poilievre c'est un fait accompli. Je pense que c'est un bozo, puis je pense que la majorité du monde commence à comprendre ça, puis je suis pas prêt à accepter que ça va être notre premier ministre, puis on va faire tout ce qu'on peut, comme l'Alliance de la fonction publique du Canada, pour lutter, pour faire sûr que ça arrive pas, que ce bozo-là se trouve pas dans une position comme ça, parce que ça c'est dévastateur, pas juste pour le mouvement ouvrier, mais pour le Canada entier.
Alex, tell me how you really feel about Pierre Poilievre.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Sharon.
No, but it's just to add to what Alex is saying as well. If you want to see what happens, just look down south from us. Look at what happened to Michigan, to Wisconsin. Look at Detroit. Detroit, from not having that unionized wage, it became a shell and completely decimated that whole city. And now we've seen the overturn of that legislation and the rebuild of those cities. So if you can imagine the role that unions play in ensuring that wages are at a standard level, a livable level, why wouldn't that be extended to everyone? And Alex is absolutely right when it comes to Pierre Poilievre. This man could have a Millhouse makeover, I call it. The glasses are gone, the hair has been done. All of a sudden he's eating an apple and he looks like, oh, that's wonderful, in a cornfield. Look at him. He's one of us. Look at the voting records.
Right.
It doesn't lie.
Yeah.
Why would you not have food security in the schools for kids? I'm sorry. Look at the voting records.
Yep, you're absolutely right. Well, speaking of voting records, we're going to end on this topic. Let's talk about the PSAC convention. I was there as an observer. We were sharing with our members every day what resolutions were adopted, defeated, and he had an impressive over 30 resolutions that were voted on by the delegates during that time, which is really something to be proud of. So I want both of you to share, to sum up your take of the PSAC and where it's headed in the coming years.
So we have a legacy of being fierce, of being trendsetters, and about we take on fights that are not short-term. We take on fights that are long-term. I think of pay equity. That was a 19-year battle with Treasury Board and 21 years with Canada Post, right? So when I look at these visions of the future, We look at the collective agreements that we negotiate. Now we're negotiating language on Indigenous rights, and it's about truth and reconciliation. And so for me, what I see as doing is some of the work that we've always done, which is looking at that bigger picture and how can we make this more fair for everyone? Because if we can negotiate it, if we can push the boundaries, then we can get it for everyone.
Right.
So that's the legacy piece. Moving forward, let me just tell you, Alex and I would have to say we complement our styles really well.
Oh my God, do you ever? Yes.
And truly, I can say it's about doing things in maybe a different way, in a different light, and ensuring that there's open space for members to connect with us, and the fact that we're reflected in the membership, what their wants and needs are moving forward. And I can tell you in terms of priorities, we're talking about a pay system that's not, let me roll the dice to see if I'm going to get paid fairly or on time.
Right.
So, making sure that disaster of Phoenix doesn't happen again. Looking at Canada Life, looking at the lack of consultation, being more militant and saying, Government of Canada, you are a leading employer. It's time for you to really show up and be present. And if not, we're going to hold you accountable. But there's so many other employers out there. We have over 300 bargaining units in PSAC. Wow. We have over 1,000 locals. We often tend to talk about the major ones that, with the majority of our members, but those small locals that have only 12 members, Best Theatronics, 12 members are in strike right now as we speak in Canada. I'm still learning geography of Ottawa. To me, they're all suburbs, but they're not. I apologize to anyone I offended, but it's just because, I'm still wrapping my head around it. In Canada, they're out there and they're striking.
Right.
Why? Does anyone know the work that they do? It's amazing that type of those small units in Iqaluit. We had 13 members who were primarily all Inuit.
Right.
And they took on the Nunavut Housing Authority, and they were out there at minus 60, which included the wind chill factor. And they were out there for over 132 days. And they walked that line. And so we have to look at all of these employers, and we need to make sure that those collective agreements are tighter, they're more protective, and we also need to recognize that just in that case, the level of racism towards our members who are Inuit or Indigenous, and we see this time and again in various departments, it's unbelievable, and we have to tackle it on. We have to tackle it on because it's the right thing to do.
Alex, comme Sharon vient de le décrire, vous avez beaucoup de pain sur la planche, mon chum. Il y a beaucoup de résolutions qui ont été adoptées au Congrès, vraiment qui donnent la direction aux syndicats où aller de l'avant. Fait comment résumerais-tu la direction qui a été setée au Congrès de la FPC, puis comment vois-tu le prochain mandat?
On a du pain sur la planche, puis on va faire des sandwichs avec ça. Je vais échoer ce que ma consoeur a dit. Je pense que les membres de la FPC, puis tu sais, c'est avec beaucoup d'humilité que je dis ça, mais on vraiment élu une équipe du tonnerre. On va travailler vraiment bien ensemble. Puis j'ai hâte pour le travail à venir. We got a lot of great work done at the convention, right? Because the convention is not just about the election piece. It's also about the resolution debate. That's an important part of it. We passed a lot of very important resolutions. I'm thinking about the resolution so that we could start rebuilding our war chest, replenishing our strike fund, raising our strike fund to $100 a day for a shift on the picket line to keep up better with cost of living. That's somewhere where our union is definitely leading. Resolutions like creating a national DCL committee, which will be tasked with producing recommendations for the National Board of Directors to review about how DCLs can be better included in political structures. Resolutions to increase the number of equity delegates that could be registered for national convention. We went from 2 per equity group to 5 per equity group. That's huge. And that's also going to include women and young workers. That's huge. A resolution to create the Conference of the North so that members in the North, 3 northern territories, can better network and connect. And we are creating the space and the resources and the tools for them to be able to do that. And I think it's important that we have these discussions as a union. And I think the political course that we've been set on from this convention is a strong one, is a bold one, is a progressive one. And I think PSAC has always been a fighting union since our founding. But over the last few years, we've really seen that ramp up, and we've really seen this fire that's been stoked in the base of our membership grow and grow and grow and grow and get hotter and hotter and stronger. We are a fighting union, and we have a lot of big fights ahead, but we're ready to take them on.
Awesome. Well, once again, Sharon D'Souza, National President of the PSAC, as well as Alex Silas, National Executive Vice President. Thank you for having taken the time to come to the Union Safety Net. We know your days are jam-packed. Congratulations to both of you on your election. And also thank you for doing what you do, because it's not just commitment, but you are making personal sacrifices for doing the job and for servicing our members. So once again, thank you for joining us on the Union Safety Net.
Thank you so much, Seb.
Merci. Puis merci à toi pour tout le travail que toi tu fais.
Merci. Merci. Thank you for joining me for this episode of the Union Safety Net, Le Filet de Sécurité Syndicale, a union podcast created by USJE for working people. If you have any feedback on today's episode or would like to suggest a topic you want us to cover, please reach out on social media platforms. We love to hear from our listeners. I'm your host, Sébastien Bezot, and I hope you'll join us next month for another episode of the Union Safety Net, Le Filet de Sécurité Syndicale.